Good evening. We will be conducting tonight's meeting in Zoom and here at City Hall in council chambers. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Fred Benzel from Grace Life Church is here to do the invocation this evening, and Mayor Joyner will begin the meeting immediately after.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for allowing us pastors to pray over all of you and our city. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful again tonight for your love, for your grace upon us, and for this gathering, Father. We're thankful for our community, for our city, for Lincoln, Father, and I just pray your continued hand upon us to bless us, to keep us safe, Father, our schools, all of our community events and activities. We thank you for our council here tonight, and we pray your hand of wisdom upon them as they talk about things that concern all of us as citizens, Father. May your hand prevail, and Father, may you grant them divine guidance to help us to better our community. We thank you for this, Father. We give you praise through Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and call the regular city council meeting, Lincoln Redevelopment Successor Agency and Lincoln Public Financing Authority meeting for June 27th, 2023 to order. Gwen, roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
And Mayor Joyner.
Here. We move on to report from closed session. We have nothing to report from closed session tonight. And Fran, would you be so good as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Fran. Agenda modifications. Are there any agenda modification from the council staff?
Yes, Mayor. If we would request, the chief has requested that 8D be pulled for just a quick comment by him. And then I'd just like to mention that 8L is a receive and file item. It includes all three rate utility reports that have been on our website now for a number of days. We put them in the agenda just so that for ease of the public if they want to access it that way. And we weren't planning on giving any additional presentation as the conclusions are the same as last meeting. So
I do have a card on that. So at least for whatever questions there might be.
Sure.
Go ahead
Mhm.
And address that there. Is there any member of the public wishing to have the council remove an item for discussion? I've already got 8L. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and I'll accept a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda. I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. We move on to presentations. We have none. We move on to public comment on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on an item not on the agenda tonight. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda? We've got two cards. Nope, we got two cards. Don Veltri. Surprise.
Thank you. Just a community update on the homelessness off of Gateway Drive. It has been gotten surveyed and the people came out to measure for the fence, the iron fence that you had approved. So thank you very much. The residents are extremely excited, extremely grateful. What I wanted to ask, always ask for a little bit more like a mouse. About 2 years ago, August of 21, I had asked and wondered what else we could do before the fence, obviously. And There were two people from the city senior engineer and Lincoln Police Traffic and UAV had suggested options for parking on Gateway. The suggestions were possibly a 2-hour parking limit along Gateway and East Street to decrease that overnight parking, and also no overnight parking for a certain time frame. And then it was brought forth about, well, the residents, obviously we live there. So the suggestion was that there could be parking by permit only on those streets for those people that had lived there, so they could park overnight and park longer than the 2 hours. The 2 hours was supposed to be because we obviously have businesses off of Gateway and we want people to be able to go into the businesses and help within the community in that aspect. So that's really what I just wanted to ask and share about support, if we would be able to see maybe option to follow through or follow up with that, and hopefully continue to decrease that homelessness of the, not necessarily the homelessness, but the illegal activities that happen because of that option. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John, you'll get with your staff and have that discussion, see if this.
Yeah, I think actually it's interesting that Officer Schneider is here tonight because we were emailing about that last week, I think. And I think what we came to was the timed parking. Brett, am I right about that? Okay.
Yeah.
But the answer, Dawn, is yes. We're gonna do that.
Brad Nevis.
Hi, everybody. I came this evening because the Native Daughters of the Golden West have been in Lincoln since 1903, and the Native Sons have been here since 1885. And they both put on the pancake breakfast, before the parade on the 4th of July in Lincoln. So I want to remind you about that and hope to see you all there. But I'm really here tonight because the Native Daughters have an annual meeting. There's like 68 parlors in the state, about 4,000 members, and they have 2 awards. One's called the Roll of Honor, and the Roll of Honor is for someone who is not eligible to be a member. They are not born in California. And it's for someone who's performed a service to the order or for the state of California. The other award is called an Image Award, and only one person receives that Roll of Honor, and they've been giving that Roll of Honor since 1910. The other award they give annually is called an Image Award, and it's given to groups. They might be born in California or not, but they're to individuals, groups, organizations, and businesses that publicly portray the positive image of California. And I sorry, I can't see people over there, but the reason the Native Daughters and Native Sons even organized was to preserve the history of California. And the Native Daughters have over 30 committees. Some are 501c3. I brought something for each of you from our Children's Foundation that helps a lot of children throughout the state, including 2 from Lincoln High School. At one time, there was a football student who was deaf, who needed someone to do sign language to help him learn the plays for the football. And we had the Native Daughters paid for that person. Another one had a tooth emergency and called in the middle of the night, and we took care of that as well. So the reason I'm here is because I nominated Ann Burge, who you know well, because she's been here a lot, because she wrote this book about Betty Brown. And Betty Brown was a longtime resident of Lincoln. She was a 2nd lieutenant in World War II. Her coat is in the museum. 115 military people gave her their insignias, and she put them all on this coat. The coat is in the museum. This is a picture of her, in her military. I don't know if you guys see over there. Anyway, I nominated Ann for writing this book about our Native Daughter member, Betty Brown, who is also a member of the Women's Club. Highway 65 went through her property, made her a very wealthy woman. And she was very generous with the city, giving back to many of the nonprofits, including the Women's Club, the Native Daughters, the Friends of the Library, the museum, And those are the only the ones that I know about. And I don't even see a clock, so I don't know how I'm doing here.
It's on the screen. The beeping
Where
tells
is
you.
it? Oh, it's BB. Oh, so my 3 minutes are almost up. Well, so here's the thing. So Ann Burge, I nominated her and I have one copy of the nomination here and she won. And not only did she win, and this is the award for the Roll of Honor, but she won both awards. And that hasn't happened in the history of the awards. So the only person in the whole state of California who's won this award 2 times is a Lincoln resident. Woo-hoo.
Wow.
You know, and I'm just very proud. I'm very proud to share that information with you. She didn't want to say anything about the book, but she does the museum and she does sell the book. All the money goes to the museum, not just the proceeds, but all sales. And the coat is on display in the museum. And I'm sure you have everybody in this room must have been to the museum. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Fran. She can pass it around for you
What picture?
in the book. So Catherine, do we have a copy of the book in your collection? Okay, good.
Okay, well, it's available at the Lincoln Museum. The coat is on display at the Lincoln Museum and it's in excellent condition. You know, when you think how old the coat is, it's in excellent condition. I guess I have to thank the city for allowing the museum to rent, you know, that place and have that wonderful place for the museum. And of course, it's always open at night when you have an event downtown because everybody uses the bathroom. So if you haven't been to the museum, be sure you go to the museum. It's open Thursday to Saturday from 11 to 3. Thank you. Thank you
Fran.
for the extra time.
You're welcome. So I'm just going to piggyback on that a tiny bit. Fran mentioned preserving the history within our city. I got a note the other day that a house that Charles Lincoln Wilson, no, I'm sorry, Gladding. Bean. The Keller House is up for sale, and that is a house that was built by Gladding McBean for one of the wives. And there was a question of whether the city would be willing to acquire it. I don't think we're in a position to do that, but it might be useful for us to get the word out that that is a historic building within our community. And yeah, the yellow brick.
Oh, okay.
I thought they were going to be here to talk about that a little bit. They are not tonight,
Let's-
so I wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, it's a pretty cool house, actually. So I've got 11 people online. Is there anyone online wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight?
Mayor, I don't see any hands raised.
And with that, I'll go ahead and close public comment.
Mayor, can we just really quickly say to Ann, congratulations. Just wanted to say congratulations on the award. That's amazing. Yes.
Good. Yeah. That is an amazing accomplishment and something that it is an amazing accomplishment, something that not only you should be proud of, but every one of us in Lincoln should be incredibly proud to have one of our own. Absolutely. That's why I asked if she's got one in the collection. She thinks she does. Okay. Good, good, wonderful. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and then move on to the consent agenda. And we've had requests to pull item 8D and item 8L. Already checked with the public, but I'll check one more time since Tony Fragy came in. Is there a request to pull any item from the consent agenda? Anyone online, Gwen? All right, seeing none, I will accept a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion, a second. Gwen, roll call.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yep.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to item 8D. Chief Alves, you requested that be pulled for a brief presentation.
All right, Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me to pull this item and address it quickly. This item it's a routine grant acceptance report. It's a CHP cannabis grant that we applied for and were given last year as well. So very routine, but I can answer any questions you may have on that. But the reason that I would like to get this pulled is I wanted to recognize the work of one of our employees who has been very diligent in obtaining these grants. Brett Schneider, why don't you come on up real quick? I wanted to put a face to the name for those of you who may not have met Officer Schneider. So Officer Schneider is our traffic officer. He has been assigned to the traffic unit full-time as a single person unit since July of 22. And since that time, so in a year's time, he's applied for 3 grants, 2 CHP cannabis grants, and 1 Office of Traffic Safety grant, totaling over $300,000 to the city to be able to combat driving under the influence enforcement. With those grants, we purchased a truck, we purchased a motorcycle, we have purchased traffic cones and equipment for holding DUI checkpoints. And without the work that he's done, we wouldn't have been able to impact DUI enforcement the way that we have over the past year. So I just wanted to publicly thank him and recognize him for the work he's done in front of all of you, and just recognize that your investment in our department and allowing us to do these things for the city, this is a result of that. So thank you for that. Thank you for the work you've done and appreciate it. All right. Any questions on the grant or anything else?
No questions. I just want to say, Officer Snyder, you look pretty slick on that bike riding around town. It's awesome when I love it.
So I have not actually seen you riding the bike yet, but the other day, there was a vehicle pulled over on 193 with a single red light sticking out the side of it. I couldn't quite figure that out and realize that was you back there. So good to have a motor officer back in town focusing on traffic. Thank you for all you do. This is a team. We've got very restricted resources within this community, and for you to be able to take the time, reach out, find additional funding to help us bring programs to the community is deeply appreciated. Thank you. Any other comments from council? Nope. You turned on the mic to say no. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Chief. All right, 8L.
We need public comment and a vote.
We should. You're right.
It's all right.
My head's somewhere else tonight. I apologize.
I
for that.
second. Dan.
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Carlskin,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Again, my apologies. Move on to item 8L, Pete DiGiordino. Pete, did you have a couple of questions? What would you like? All right.
I just want to get some information on it so that I can see what increase have you taken on for the last 10 years that you haven't passed on to us? What does that add up to? And what is that going to lead to? You know, what are we going to have to pay? Because this has been a really big issue for the old people that lived in the city of Lincoln. I was one of the first guys in Lincoln to have a copy machine. For that, I used to use carbon paper. And at that time, we had a city council that kept raising the water and sewer. And obviously, it's been continuing because the city's been sued. They had to give money back, and now they want more money again for the water and sewer. So at that time, what we did is I actually went up to the city council people and told them that if they voted for another increase, that we were going to recall them. And we got together with some people, used my copy machine, made up recalls, took them to citizens in the city. It was really easy to do because every citizen said, how can I help? So we passed off a handful of them and said, well, you take your street. Next thing you know, the city council was recalled. I'm not saying that the water and sewer shouldn't be raised, but what I am saying is right down the street here, there's a really nice lady named Andrea Navarez that she gets a total of $1,100 and some odd dollars a month to live on. That's it. That's all that she has, unlike many of us. And, you know, I take care of her yard, remodeled a lot of her house, gave her a new cat, did whatever I could to help. But there's a lot of people in town here that are in that position. So I look around, everybody driving new cars, people are taking cars home. People that work for the city of Lincoln have better benefits than anybody that does the same job in civilian life. Have you guys looked at other ways to balance your budget? I know in 2008, I used to supply 100% of my medical for all my employees. That meant if you work for Pete DiGiordano, after 6 months, your medical was paid for 100%, but it didn't stop there. Your spouse was paid and all of your children, okay? In 2008, we had a recession in this country. And what I did is I opened up the books to my employees and I said, hey, look, you know, I tried to do what I could do. You all have a pension plan, you have 9 paid holidays, you have all this stuff, but we're not taking in as much money. So we have to make a decision here as to what we're going to do and how we're going to keep this company open, because that was our main focus at that time. If we lost the company, they lost their jobs, right? And so we had to cut a lot of things. Everybody that worked for me agreed with it. And as things got better, well, their life got better. So I just like to get informed in this, and I like to see what else you guys have done to balance this budget. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, she's on a limited income. What's she gonna do? I was dealing where there was no market there for my cabinets, right? I mean, I did all the subdivisions around here, I still do. I do work all the way to the Bay Area, wherever, right? Well, there was no work out there. I couldn't raise my prices. Just want to give you something to think about. And I would like to ask you, where can I get some information on how new your cars are, how new your trucks are, how new this is, how new that is? And there was some money that we just brought in right here, right? Which was a gift. At that time, I was getting like, you know, almost 7 figures back from the government from all the taxes that I paid. All of that went back in there. You know, sometimes you have to take your money into gifts that you get and you have to use them in the right place. Now, I really appreciate the work that the officer's done, but we're a city, we're a family here.
Yeah, I need to ask you to wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, that's my comment. Where can I get some information
Actually,
on what else you guys have done?
This, you've got the budget tonight and you've got the reports on those utilities
Okay.
within the packet. That's what we're discussing right this moment, but I'll go ahead and toss
Yeah.
it to
Okay,
Sean.
thank you
If-
very much for
you
your
bet.
time. I appreciate it.
If you go to our website, lincolnca.gov, on the very front page, there's a little bar you can click that says public hearing notice utility rate increases. And that takes you to a website that has virtually everything that you just asked for in a pretty organized set of
It
reports.
has what else you guys have done in order to balance your budget without passing it on to the people.
I'm not sure. Are you saying what areas that we've cut?
Well, I
Because
just,
balancing a budget is either cutting or funding, right?
right, so,
So yes.
so I would just like to see what has been cut, how you guys have been spending your money. Because from what I understand from here is the city, if it doesn't do this thing here, it's going to be a big deal for the city, right?
Mhm.
So you've got a city administrator, is that you?
Yes.
Why isn't the budget balanced?
Well, I think that when you read the reports, you'll see that the problem with not addressing rates in a 10-year period is that costs that are beyond our control, for example, water services that we purchase from out of the area, for example, power services that we have to pay, PG&E, those all raise over time, right? We have no control over those. In
Definitely.
addition to, staffing levels have generally remained the same over that period of time. And so I think what you'll see is that the primary driver of this is the lack of addressing rates over a very long period of time, which is, I assume you run a business, and I'm assuming you don't charge the same rate that you charged 10 years ago for those same services. And I'm not sure that many businesses do. So, but what I would just say is read the reports, and I'm available. If you want to talk about ways that we could save money in addition to what we've already done, we're happy to talk.
I really do. And you know what? I understand what you're saying because I've been behind the 8 ball. I've been too busy doing the work sometimes to take my raise when I need it, right? Then all of a sudden I got to go to the customer and say, hey, I need an extra 5%. But my understanding is it's not 5%, it's not 10%. So there's a lot of things that can be done to balance a budget. And the government seems like they balance the budget off of people's backs. This country's going bankrupt. It is. You know what? You guys don't want to face it. You guys don't care. People don't care, but it is going bankrupt. And we're in a position now where our business is being held up. They raised the interest rates in this country, but our business hasn't slowed down. You know why? Because we get all of our products from China and we have nothing else to give back to them except our natural resources and our land. So the
Pete, I'm
Chinese
gonna ask
corporations
you-
are now
I'm going to ask you
purchasing
to do us a favor, Pete.
all of these houses.
The reports are in this agenda. Go online, read through those. The budget is there as well. And if you have any questions after you've gone through
I'm
those,
definitely going to
reach out
talk
to
to him
Sean.
and we will get this squared away and we will handle it again if we have to.
Thank you.
I do have a hand raised on Zoom.
All right.
Lena Lebowski, please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just have a question and a comment about the LISWA charge. You know, back when Sean was presenting the idea to the council, or the plan, I should say, to the council about joining with Placer County regarding the wastewater, he said that there would be a small cost to get that started up, that the general manager would probably work part-time for a while. But on our rate increase, $34.56 per month is asked to go for LISWA, which is that collaboration with Lincoln and the county. And Sean said that there were 25,000 homes in the wastewater section, and that's $10.3 million per year. And, there's nowhere to go to find out where this $10 million is going to go to. And, I just would like to know why LISWA is so high. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Sean, would you like to address that?
So what I would say is that whether or not LISWA existed today, we would be dealing with roughly the exact same rate. It just would be paid to the city of Lincoln versus LISWA. One of the things that I have to keep reminding myself, even I fall into this, is that LISWA, while it is a separate legal entity, it's really the city of Lincoln and Placer County. We are LISWA. So much like I mentioned just a moment ago, many of the catch-up items as it relates to getting the utilities into a sound fiscal position are a result of an action over a number of years. And so there is a capital component that needs to be funded in terms of the plant, but operations would be, and capital for that matter, if LISWA had never existed, we would be having roughly the exact same conversation we're having today. And Lena, I know I think you sent me an email on this. I don't think I've gotten you a full response back, but I'll make a note to do that in the morning and send you a couple links.
Thank you, Sean. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none. Open to a motion.
I move approval.
I'll second. Motion second.
Thank you. Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We move on to public hearings. We have none this evening. Item 10A, general business, adopt resolution 2023-121, approving the, is it biennial? Is that how we're saying it? Biennial budget and cap.
Biennium budget.
Biennium? There's an L on the end.
I know.
And capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2023-25 and adopting an appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023 through 24 for the city of Lincoln.
Thank you. Anita Racker, Finance Director for the city. We do have a brief PowerPoint for City Council's consideration. And IT was telling me they're having some technical difficulties, so hopefully we can get that displayed. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So yes, this is the city's first biennium budget. The city adopted a resolution to move to a biennium budget period. Just for everyone's clarification, a biennium budget is a 2-year budget cycle. It's a 24-month budget cycle. So different from any other budget that you've seen before, this one encompasses 24 months of revenues and 24 months of expenses. And I'll say it's taken us some getting used to every time Ruth Ann and I, my finance manager, look at the revenues. We're like, why are they so high? Oh yes, 2 years, 2 years. So keeping that in mind, we're going to go through a brief presentation. We've done a couple of workshops providing a lot of detailed information. So this is really going to be a high-level overview of the budget information. So as I just said, this is our first biennium budget, and the combined budget is $278,889,158 across all funds. We have about 55 or so. And there's about 44 million in capital projects over the 2-year budget cycle. We're going to be focusing on the general fund a little bit, as that is the sort of the largest, well, it is the largest discretionary fund within the city. The fund that encompasses primarily your public safety budget, as well as library, recreation, administration, and other departments like that. Just a brief trend of the general fund over years. You can see that the revenues have generally kept pace with the expenses and increasing of the expenses, with the exception of the last 3 years. So the current year, we're projecting that the revenues and expenses are going to meet. For this budget period, we are included in the budget. We have more expenses than revenues. And that's primarily due to CIP or one-time costs. If we didn't have those one-time costs included, then the revenues would exceed the expenses and continue to grow the fund balance. But in the budget, the fund balance is going down just a little bit. Also, it should be noted that the general fund currently supports the LADs as sufficient revenues are not collected through those funds. So we've got about, in this budget, $1.6 million being diverted from general fund uses to the LADs. A reminder of the primary revenue sources for the general fund. Property taxes are our biggest revenue source, and we are looking at about a 5% increase in each budget year. We feel that's a reasonable increase, so slightly above the, you hear the common 2% with Prop 8, but realistically, with houses being sold, that it typically ends up being higher than that for most cities. This city is no exception to that. And then as far as general fund uses or the primary expenditures for the city, you can see that approximately 70% of the operating expenses goes to police and fire. So this is important to note because as I said, right now we've got about $1.6 million being diverted to the LAD. Really, every dollar that we divert out of the general fund to support anything else that's not a general governmental expenditure is a dollar away from public safety. And that's really how I look at it. This year in the budget, we included a 5-year forecast. This is the first time that we've had a 5-year forecast in the budget. Now, this is not a 5-year strategic document. It's a much bigger document that typically stands on its own. This is a very brief 5-year estimate of the of the projected revenues and expenses. So you can see, as I said in the budget, that we're looking at expenses exceeding revenues for the 2 years. And the red line there is our current fund balance. And that the fund balance will go down over the next 5 years. The biggest increases in fiscal year 27 and 28 are due to the expiration of the public safety tax share that is currently funding firefighters and police officers, and the use of standard allowance funds to also fund some firefighters and police officers. So once those funds are expired or completely expended, the burden for that is going to fall on the general fund. And that additional burden, without a change in the revenue sources available to the general fund, will eventually deplete it. So as we were talking about the public safety tax share, just a brief recap of where it currently stands. We get up to $1.5 million in revenues each year from the public safety tax share. We will max out in this current fiscal year at the 1.5 million. And we will max out during the budget period of 1.5 million over each year for 3 million total. So as a reminder, that agreement with Placer County allows the county or allows the city to collect over $8 million. We're capped at $8 million currently. And we anticipate that we're going to receive that $8 million before the agreement expires in fiscal year 26-27. There is an opportunity for the city to access an additional $2 million, but it requires a sales tax initiative. In the last budget, we promised to provide updates of the ARPA funds and the standard allowance monies. So we're continuing on our recap of those expenditures. In fiscal year 21-22, we used it for primarily some wage expenditures as well as some equipment expenditures. And that's been the primary use of those standard allowance funds, having to do with public safety wages and also wage increases related to contract negotiations for retro payments and one-time bonuses. And then the ARPA funds, we're still working on a plan to expend those ARPA funds. We only have 1.5 million left as ARPA funds, and there are so many projects that this city has that we could just swallow up those ARPA funds really like that with a snap of the fingers. And so we're trying to be mindful of the projects that we use those money for to bring back a project that'll have a positive impact on the community.
Nita, sorry to interrupt you, but could you touch just a moment on 22-23, the one, I'm not sure which fiscal year it's in, but the business and nonprofit.
Yes, so I'll start. Actually, one of those grants was paid out in 21-22. The small business grants were paid out in 21-22, but the small nonprofit grants were paid out in 22-23, as well as the large nonprofit grants were paid out in 22-23. So as with the total funds that the council originally designated to be used for the purpose of benefiting the city community that had been impacted by COVID, we've given out all but about 300,000 of that. Okay. Moving on to the enterprise funds. Pardon me. So actually all of our enterprise funds are currently in a deficit status, and they've been in a deficit status for multiple years. So here's a clear graph of that expenditures have exceeded revenues. And there's a lot of talk in the community. Why is the city raising rates? Why are rates so high? And this is a clear image of why the rates are being raised, why we're asking for the increase, and why the increase is what it is. Is the city, the operational expenses for all of our utility funds, but especially water and sewer, have outpaced the revenues that we have. There haven't been rate increases in 10 years, while our expenses continue to rise. We received information from Placer County Water Agency today, kind of a listing of their expenses over the years. And if we look at their rate increases, they've had some very large rate increases. Back in 2013, it was 8%. And then we've had some nominal rate increases, 1%, 2%, 3%. And back in 2018, it was 8.3%, another huge increase. and then regular CPI increases. This year, we are looking at another 8% increase in our water costs. So we just look at the operational costs, the amount that we're being charged in order to provide clean and safe drinking water to our community without any additional funds to cover those costs. So the same issue with the wastewater fund. And as Sean said, that yes, there is a JPA now formed, LISWA, that has taken over the treatment of wastewater. But regardless of whether that treatment was handled by the city or handled by the JPA, the reality is that we have only been collecting enough revenues to handle the collections portion of those expenses. And so that again results in a large increase happening. Again, rates haven't been raised in over 10 years. So that is a large increase in happening. And I think it's also important to note that these utilities have to stand on their own. Each one is like a little mini business. They can't borrow from, they can't take from, they can't get a gift from, you know, the grant that Officer Snyder received in order for the program that he's designed and built and keeps afloat can only be used for that purpose. Grant funds can't be used for another purpose like shoring up water rates. You know, the general fund could shore up water rates, it could shore up wastewater. Again, every dollar we divert from the general fund is a dollar that we take away from public safety. Last is the solid waste fund, and that's the healthiest of our three unhealthy funds. But still, you can see that the expenses are going to continue to outpace the revenues. And just looking at the blue line and seeing the flat revenues over time while the expenses continue to rise. Again, these are just graphic displays of why the rate increases are needed. Moving on to the airport fund. So this fund has been ailing for a long time, but it's finally starting to try to turn the corner. We now have an airport committee that's meeting monthly, and their goal is to increase revenues, to find ways for the airport to be self-sustaining and fiscally sustaining within throughout the future. The airport is in a deficit status with that negative fund balance of about $6 million, $5.6 million. And that's as a result of really purchasing the property, the vacant property that's adjacent to it. So the way to cure that deficit is to do something with that property, to develop it in some way or to sell it or some other purpose, but to do something with that property besides having it sit there and having to bury that debt. We're almost done. New positions this year. We don't have a great deal of new positions. I'm going to start with Public Works because I've been harping on utilities. You'll see that we're not adding a bunch of new people in water or wastewater. In fact, we have one position that is a reclassification, but no new positions. And I think it's important for the community to understand there are 8 people, 8 staff members in the water department, and they handle water and streets. So, and Sean's given this example before, if there is a leak and we have to pull 4 people to take care of that leak, that is half of the entire department. So when people talk about what can you cut out of these departments, they're already bare bones. There are no people to cut. I mean, if we cut 8 people out of water, everybody, you know, you all have to be laid off now in order to keep the rates lower, then that means the city is going to have to contract that service out. It doesn't save the city all of that money because now you're going to have to contract out that service to a vendor that pays prevailing wage, to a vendor that complies with all the government codes for purchasing and regulating government codes that we don't set, but we have to follow. So it doesn't save us those dollars. It's just putting those dollars to a different use. So other new positions, again, we're not adding many this fiscal year within each of the departments and across citywide. I think it's important to note for public safety that we are going to provide some upper management support that we added firefighters this year, which was phenomenal to just be able to increase our fire staff to a level that allows us to have up to 3 people in a station each day, that we're lacking that oversight within the fire and in the police, that we have a public safety chief who's really split between those two agencies, police and fire. And so we're providing him that support. We're finally able to do that. And just a quick, we've gone over capital projects in a previous workshop, so I'm not going to belabor them at this point. I do have just like a quick slide on the dollars in each one of the different areas. I do have additional information if you'd like to go through any one of the areas or you have questions on the previous projects that we provided. And other than that, that is the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you, Nita. I'll go ahead and go to the council for questions in a moment, but we've all been going through this conversation for a very long time. So if it appears that most of our questions have been answered, it's because of that process and going through the budget and building the budget alongside of staff. And I've seen nothing from me tonight that pops out as new or unusual. Any members of the council have questions for Nita?
No, but thank you, Nita. That was good.
The question that I have is on that 300,000 that was left for the nonprofits.
Standard allowance.
Yeah, when are we doing that one to end that?
So the way it sort of organically materialized was the council had originally set up this of the 2 million that was set aside for businesses and nonprofits, a little over 1 million of that, I think about 1.1 million went to businesses in Lincoln. We funded, I don't even know how many, but lots and lots of small businesses in Lincoln. I'm roughly estimating here, but our nonprofit, our small nonprofit allocation was 400. Does that sound right to you, Nita? I think that's about right.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
$400,000 went to nonprofits in the form of small grants too for the work that they do. Then you just approved the mental health grant, which was 280. And then there's an additional 300-ish that was set aside for either a round 2 of that, or alternatively, there's been some discussions with some local providers that work with our homeless organizations that may, propose some options to provide services. So that'll be forthcoming here when Christina and I bring you our long-awaited homeless pilot program, July 25th.
I don't have a question. I do have a comment. This is the best, most understandable budget document. And most people only see the slides that are presented, but the budget document itself is excellent. And I think your staff and you should be applauded.
I agree completely. Our finance manager, Ruth Ann Codina, and our financial analyst, Prashil Kashev, they have many, many hours into this budget document, and it is very clear. It's understandable. It's easy to read. It's written in plain language, and I think laid out well. So
The plot is a little flaky, but other than
so I appreciate all of their efforts and dedication to providing the city with a document that is easy to understand.
Bill, any comments, questions? None? All right. Well, in the same way that Sean tends to steal your thunder by speaking up, Dan has just done the same thing for me. This is by far, and Richard, I saw your hand go up. This is by far the most approachable budget document that I've seen in the 14 years I've been on the council. It is within the first few minutes, very easy to know exactly what you're looking at, exactly where you need to look to find the information that you're seeking. And I've been through it 3 times now. There is nothing there that causes me to say, wait a minute, how does this tie to that? It's all there, easily perceivable, easily understandable. So thank your staff, thank your team. And I've been promised by Sean, it's only going to get better from here. So
Because we have an antiquated system, the budget document is manually created. And they're not a bunch of, you don't just push a button and all these wonderful spreadsheets and graphs and tables just materialize. It is manually created and calculated. Everything has to be cross-referenced and triple checked because there's no like, oh, I'll just create this document and it flows into another document. None of that.
I mean, it's not as simple as pushing a button, and having it just come out.
We, once we move to Tyler, once we go live with Tyler for our next budget cycle, we're hoping to utilize one of their partners that provides a budget book. And there will still be an amount of work, but there will be an ability to, in a sense, push a button to create a fair amount of it.
And you said that's the next budget cycle, so 26?
Yeah,
20,
25, 27.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions or comments from the council, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Richard, your hand was up.
Thank you, Richard Burrows, City Treasurer. First of all, Dan and Paul, you both also stole my thunder. I've been dealing with government finance for decades, and this is one of the best documents that I've seen. It really does lay out everything for the public, and if anyone is interested in seeing the background of why things are what they are, it's a very readable and approachable document. I think that's excellent. The other thing that I really found encouraging is the 3-year outlook. You know, what the city staff has done in this last year has not only created a 2-year budget from a 1-year budget history, but also to layer a 3-year outlook on top of it. And the reason why this is so important is because the decisions that you folks make today, if it's just stovepiped, you have no idea what the impact is going to be 2, 3, 4, and 5 years ago. By working, and I know that this is a first-year effort in the 3-year outlook, this is the critical path of how we can better understand and make better informed decisions, for the community. So congratulations. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I heard right. I don't hear so well and I don't see so well. I'm 76 years old, so you have to excuse me. Did I hear that there hasn't been an increase in utilities in the past 10 years? Okay, well, that's wrong. You guys have increased utilities to the point where you got sued and had to give money back. So I don't know how you can say that there's no increase when you guys had overstepped the increase, got sued, and have to give money back. I've been here so long that Charlie Joyner wanted me to run for city council, and my brother. Congratulations for being the mayor now. It's how can you say you haven't had increase when you've been sued because you were taking so much?
Well, I think the better way to say it is that there has not been a successful increase in a 10-year period. So to put a finer point on that, the city did initiate a similar process to what we're going through now in 2012, adopted rates, experienced those rates for a roughly 18-month period. This is post-drought when a number of different clarifications were made legally. And then eventually the rates were essentially rolled back to 2013 rates. And roughly $5 million was refunded. So since then, there was a minor rate adjustment in 2018 to water and none since. So it's not exactly accurate to say there's been absolutely nothing that's happened over the past 10 years. It's just there hasn't been a successful 5-year rate adjustment created, adopted, and implemented the way the vast majority of agencies in California do. So we'll be much more nuanced moving forward about explaining that, because the gentleman who's gone now, his point is fair, is that it's not the full story.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak on this item?
We do have somebody on Zoom. Lena, please go ahead.
I have just a quick question. In the body of the budget, it shows water and garbage in the red. So am I to assume that today's rates were used to do those figures? Thank you.
Elena, yes, that's correct. What you'll see let's just take water as an example, because it's the one we talked about the most. I did a little math today. It's roughly 25, expenditures are roughly 25% more than anticipated revenues in both year one of this budget and year two of this budget. So correct.
And I would say that we did that because rates have not been adopted. So we can only include in the budget the rates that currently exist. We can't include in the budget the rates that we want to exist. So that's why that's there, Lena.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Lena? Not coming off of mute, so I'm assuming the answer is no.
That's all. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. All right. With that, if there's no one else online, Gwen,
No other
go
hands
ahead
are
and
raised,
bring it
Mayor.
back up here for a motion.
I'll motion to adopt resolution 2023-122.
Or second?
And I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sorry, yes, Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes.
Congratulations. Good work. No, that's not allowed.
For those at home that couldn't hear that because her microphone was off, she said she's going to retire now. No, you're not. All right, item 10B, adopt resolution 2023-122, declaring an emergency and an immediate need to expend funds to repair a failed storm drain line on East Avenue, or East 11th Street, I'm sorry. Allocate $203,569 from unencumbered balance of CFD 2018-1 and authorize the city manager to execute a contract for construction with C&D Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $203,569. Who's going to take this one? Travis, you're looking
Yeah,
at Sean. Sean's
okay.
looking at.
Yeah, Travis is gonna give a report on the detail. Well, let me just explain and then I'll lead it to Travis.
And funding.
Yeah, so we typically would have just put this kind of thing on consent, but there's two reasons when Travis and I were discussing this, that we put it on to general business. One is that this is a really good example of an emergency situation as it relates to well, you'll see some really interesting pictures of some old infrastructure that created a very dangerous situation on the roadway. And we're used to a very prescribed process for public projects. You bid, you get city council approval, you make sure you have competitive prices, it then is awarded, and so on and so on and so on. Sometimes we have these situations where we have close to cataclysmic events where we have to move quickly to fix something because there's a really serious health and safety issue. And there's a section of our municipal code that gives me the authority to authorize those expenditures if it's a true health and safety issue. And we wanted to just give an example of that so that it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I think it's worth highlighting. And so Travis is going to explain what happened, how it was fixed, and then how we funded that fix. And really what you're being asked is retroactive approval because it wasn't the type of problem that we could wait 2 weeks for a council meeting for.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so running into this, I'll give a real quick description of where it was, what it was, and how we're looking to pay for it or how we propose funding it. So where it was, we got a sinkhole. It was on 11th Street, east of East Avenue, between Harold and Wilson. The thing to remember on that, it's a 42-inch line. That automatically means that it's a pretty big line. It's capturing a lot of shed boundaries. This line actually captures everything north of Virginia Town with Lincoln Highlands, with Aspen Meadows, with Frontier Estates, the new East 10th subdivision that just went in. There's a very big shed boundary that comes to this storm drain line. So back on March 13th, Matt's team here got a phone call from a resident that was just concerned saying, hey, it looks like a pothole is developing. We went out, supported Matt's team, both engineering and public works went out there. We poked our head in the hole, and we found that 3 dump trucks worth of material was already missing from under the road. As you guys can see in those photos, it's just a small, 2x2 or so pothole at the surface of the road. But the second photo, the top right photo in the staff report, that's what it looked like when we just opened up a little bit more asphalt. So on March 13th, we poked our head and we saw this huge void underground. We put some plates over it, but again, a single plate can't cover 3 dump trucks worth of missing road section underneath the asphalt. So we closed the road. We ended up with having to reroute some residents. It was, I mean, a very big deal. And back in March, that's when we had those second round of atmospheric events. So we knew that we had to move forward. So Public Works and Engineering worked together. We went out and solicited prices, or really availability, from 3 of our local contractors that were already engaged with the city of Lincoln. The only one with resources available to jump on it the next day was C&D. So we went forward with them. And I mean, talking about the extent of repairs, this trench was what, 12 feet wide, 14 feet deep. And then we ended up having to remove just over 40 feet of storm drain line. The failed section, so when we dug down, just the whole pipe was gone. It was a combination of an old corrugated metal pipe and a spiral aluminum pipe. Both of those pipes were previously failed, completely disintegrated, and all this material just washed downstream. And it is worth noting, downstream means it goes across East Avenue to those new basins that we installed as part of the Meadowlands project. So it goes to open waterways almost immediately downstream. So we dug down, we had to engineer shores, we had to go and find some pipe material as soon as we could. And we did what we would consider right now a temporary repair. This 40 feet that we replaced is very, very sound, but on both sides of it, we will be coming forward with a capital project to work on the replacement of the storm drain lines as funding allows. In total, it came to about just over $200,000. We did the whole contract on time and materials. That's prescribed labor rates per prevailing wage. That's established equipment rates per Caltrans. There's no gouging. There's no even negotiating. We describe what work we want to have performed. The contractor does it on predetermined markups and allowable expenses. So by March 20th, we had the whole backfilled. It took a little while to get weather allowance for paving, but in total, with the amazing support of Matt's teams, with the streets crew, with engineering and the relationships with the contractors, within a week and a half, we were able to reestablish the roadway for the residents, create a safe condition, and really put it back together, everything other than paving. So that takes us to how we're going to fund it. And Nita and I were working on this. Our proposed funding is coming out of CFD 2018-1. Obviously, that's a little bit of a newer funding source, but that funding source does have 2 different components. It's got a citywide component and a local component. And for citywide component, the allowable expenses are parks, landscape lighting, signals, open spaces, and stormwater. Obviously, this was a very critical, serves a number of different residential communities, number of development areas. It wasn't just the benefit of one community or one residence. So we feel that it is very much an allowable expense to use the 2018-1 stormwater set aside funding for these repairs. So bring it back to the recommendation. As Mayor Joyner said, we're looking to declare an emergency and immediate need to expend the funds to repair the failed storm drain on East 11th Street, allocating $203,000 from an unencumbered balance of Fund 285, which is at CFD 2018-1, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract for construction with C&D contractors in the amount of $203,569. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions or comments from the council?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank you for getting that taken care of so quickly, because on that side of town, there's always a lot of issues. So I really appreciate that.
So I thought I heard you say that that it was a temporary fix, hoping, was it more permanent, or do we still need to go back and do something?
This portion is very much a permanent fix. It's all encapsulated with slurry, but again, this is 40 feet of a multi-1,000-foot run.
Right.
The condition of this one is the area of pipe that failed, but we only dug it back to where we had competent enough pipe to tie onto, not until we had like new condition pipe. So there's a strong possibility that going down the road, we'll need to rehab the adjacent upstream and downstream. The good thing is that those areas haven't failed yet, so we can look at some alternative methods, whether it's a liner product or some other less invasive rehabilitation of the pipeline.
Perfect. Thank you.
I would imagine that very much like working on a car, you fix one thing, it puts stress on everything else. You begin to just chase after the next thing. Yeah.
I had questions regarding the CFD and why you chose that method. You've answered those correctly. Takes away all my worries.
We try.
You stole Dan's
Yeah,
thunder.
We try to
Travis.
steal Dan's thunder
Yeah.
anytime we can.
I would like to add a point to just consider, and it's one of the reasons why investment in infrastructure is so important. If you notice, 40 feet of pipeline cost us $200,000. So when we're estimating CIP investment, and not for this size of pipe, but we're in the range of $600 to $1,200 a foot. So you can imagine it's exponentially more expensive to make these repairs on an emergency basis than it is to plan and get economies of scale when we do these types of projects. So that's one of the approaches we took in evaluating the rate studies and all the infrastructure that we have that's really old, that could fail at any moment. So that this is just a perfect example of why you plan ahead, why you invest in infrastructure. And unfortunately, if you look down the roadway just beyond this, you can see undulations in the pavement. So there's likely more work ahead in this area.
Thank you, Matt. I hear your nightmares coming out there. It can fail at any moment, anytime, anywhere. Bill, any questions, comments? None? I really wish we'd been able to throw up those photographs because I really don't think you can understand the immensity of this project. And we're very, very lucky that nobody was injured in this
Yeah.
incident.
I'd encourage anybody that just, if you just go to the agenda and click the last item, you could see some pictures Travis included in his report. But I think I eyeballed it. Travis, is it accurate to say that the size would be roughly the size of a full-size pickup truck could almost fit in that entire hole, right?
Yeah, two of them on top of each other.
Oh, okay, got it. It's very deep as well. Okay, got it.
Not one, but two. Since there's nothing more from the council, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this item in the room? Being none, online?
No hands are raised.
All right, I'll bring it back up here for a motion.
Okay, I move approval of resolution 2023-122.
I'll second.
First and a second, Glenn?
Councilmember Andriana,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skent,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We move on to city managers' reports.
No report tonight, Mayor, except for happy 4th of July. Everybody's getting ready for that. What is that? Next week. And we're gonna have public works crews out and helping kind of set things up. We've partnered similar to previous years to help the process move along. So we're looking forward to it.
Very good. If any folks have not attended our Independence Day celebrations, it's one for the books. It grows every year. And being involved in the parade, I think my fellow council members will support this. When the fire truck turns the corner and you look up the street and you see 4,000 or 5,000 people lining the streets of Lincoln, all celebrating our Independence Day together, that is an amazing cultural support that I honestly don't think I've seen in any of our surrounding communities.
Nope. I had a conversation with somebody last couple of days about, which was the best show. And there were comments that the Roseville one at the grounds is the best. And I had to beg to differ. But what my point was, I said, well, what I can say is that not counting COVID years, when Roseville canceled and other places canceled, Lincoln has never canceled. Our community has pulled together, raised the funds every single year, and we have thousands of people come from all over the region to come to Lincoln for our fireworks. So I still maintain that ours is the best.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one of the reasons for that, and I don't know if it's happened this year, is in the past, fundraising has been a little slower than they would have liked. And so you bought a package given the projected revenues you were going to have. And then funding started coming in. That initial package had a finale in it. Then you got a little more money and you added to the package, which had an additional finale in it. And if you were lucky, you did it a third time, and most years you were lucky. And you got that third one with a finale. And so you have this massive fireworks show that goes on for 25 minutes. You think it's done, and then off it goes again with another finale. You think it's done, and off it goes again. So that is the thing I think that makes it stand out to be a pretty remarkable event. Not just that, just everyone coming together as a community for that full day and celebrating together is so rare. Council initiated business. Is there any council initiated business tonight? Seeing none. Council committee reports. Bill? Nothing on the Missile site?
We had a meeting, we're still discussing things and we're trying to improve communication between us and the members of the Congress. Congressman Kiley and our two senators.
Attended the LISWA board meeting, approved the budget for next year. However, it's a it's a temporary budget until we get all of the financial information from bonding. So it's got some placeholders in it, but it's a budget that's going to get changed.
Good.
That's about all we did.
Yeah.
Airport committee? I'll have to look it up, but we can do that. I'll pull it up while the others doing their reports.
Oh, I can go. Dan already covered LISWA. I attended the Placer Regional Homeless Response Task Force. I don't even know what we're calling it anymore. We've changed the names. It's the action plan, whatever. Actually, Christine and I both were there. And so they did a bunch of updates and things like that. But I think probably the two big takeaways from this meeting was that we finally have the health services on board with Kaiser and Sutter wasn't there, but Kim Menzel from Kaiser was there. Yeah. And I talked to her afterwards and she was like, yes, please invite me, like whoever she was talking to. I think she was talking to Krista Bernasconi. Yeah. She said, yes, I want to be there. And I had said to her, you're the piece that's been missing from this whole thing. Because we can talk about law enforcement and councils and county supervisors and funding, all that. But if we don't have the medical partners with us, then we're missing a piece. So it was really great to have her there. And I think she'll be involved moving forward. And then I'm on the one of the little subcommittees, the communications group. And so what we're working on now is creating a web space on the county website that has a link to all the jurisdictions that when people want to know what we're doing, because the general public doesn't really know what we're doing. They say, we have a homeless problem. We see all these homeless people. Why can't you get rid of the homeless people? And what are you doing about it? Well, they don't really understand what we've actually done, specifically the things that Lincoln has done, but Roseville, Rockland, other jurisdictions. And so the idea is to have a page that kind of briefly talks about what we've been doing, what our plans are, and then a link to each city where we would provide content to say, this is actually what we're doing. These are our plans moving forward so that people can see, oh, they're actually doing something and they can, have information and then contact us if they have questions. So we're really excited about that.
So Christine, along those lines, your code enforcement folks had a major breakthrough with one of our residents down along the creek who's been down there for 20-some years.
We did.
Yeah.
We had a really amazing opportunity where a gentleman had been incarcerated for several weeks. And he left the jail, walked straight to City Hall and looked up our code enforcement officers and said, I don't want to go back there anymore. I need help. And so we've been able to, with the work of HHS and the Gathering Inn, have been able to get him housed and off the creek, and he's doing great.
That's awesome.
Those are the things that make it worthwhile.
100%.
2 decades of not having the right people in place, the right moment in time to actually be able to reach them. And this time he reached out to us. It's pretty remarkable. So well done.
Couple more things. I wanted to also mention, going back to the 4th of July, really good. Tom says that there's 81 entries in the parade, completely out of space, which I don't know if that's probably the biggest to date. Yeah. And then also, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Potters are about halfway through their season. So if you have not made it to a game, you need to go see the Potters. It's a ton of fun and they're doing pretty well, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, they are. We're missing it because we're here, but yeah. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Got it. Thank you. Ben, I don't think you've got
No, I was on
anything to
vacation.
report. So I've got a couple very quickly. I attended the SACOG board meeting. There was nothing voted on that affects us in Placer County or in Lincoln. Pretty extensive agenda focused on the 4-county region of the Sacramento area. We also met right after that in something called the Funding Round Committee, which is the 4-county region has done a competitive funding round since the beginning with SACOG, and Placer County and El Dorado County have been doing their own individual funding and project proposals with a MOU with SACOG that has allowed them to take a look at it and agree with what's being done. Unfortunately, there was a ruling that came down against Caltrans that said that method of allocating funds was inappropriate. And so we are being forced, along with El Dorado County, into a 6-county funding round, competitive funding round, with all 6 of the counties within SACOG. And so this funding committee is an attempt with representatives of Placer and El Dorado and the other counties to find a path forward that does not harm our funding sources. And that is our greatest fear, is that in a 6-county competitive funding round, Sacramento County is going to eat our lunch on projects. They just have the population. And so this is a concerted effort to work our way through that. This is only our 2nd meeting. It's largely informative at this point. It's going to be another year, I think, before we really get into the meat of creating a framework that we can follow moving forward. But I continue to work with Matt Click at PCTPA on really zeroing in on what we need out of this agreement moving forward. So I'll continue to keep you informed on that. Dan and I both attended the airport committee meeting. Just very quickly, broad conversations about the excess airport area update. I'm assuming that's the 90 acres. I'm just trying to remember that we had broad conversations, open conversations, not so much presentations.
We spoke about some economic development interests. That's pretty exciting out by the airport. Hopefully we're successful in some of them, and I don't like telling about anybody that might be interested because sometimes they don't actually.
And
come
sometimes
forward.
somebody else finds out about them and steals them away.
Yeah,
we
so,
don't want that.
but suffice to say, there's been quite a bit of interest out there. The second thing we spent a lot of time on was the leasing of hangars. And so got some really great feedback from that group about ways to sort of change what I had put together that would work more for the aviation community. And so I'm getting that taken care of. I'm going to finalize it and send it around to the committee, and then we're going to be out for proposals for new hangar builds out there, which would be great. And then in the next meeting, we're going to be having a discussion on changing the flight pattern of the airport, basically flipping it, which would provide some opportunities for not only more safety, but some development advantages too. So pretty cool.
And a little quieting of the pattern as well.
I think
More distance.
Richard and Paul are probably better to speak on this, but I think the Foskett area will like it quite a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they will too. All right. Other than that, I've got PCTPA tomorrow morning and PCWA retreat on Thursday, and I'll report on those next time around. Yeah, me too. Me too. I was unsure, but we're going to get it done. With that, we move on to information items. Anyone have an information item? Okay. No, that's fine. That is our last item. We are now officially adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, staff.
Yeah. Biennium is easy.